Brian LeClair is the most successful professional bowler to ever come out of the Capital Region. He cashed in 182 PBA events and earned over $500,000. But there was one accomplishment always missing: a win. LeClair finished second twice, but never got his hands around a trophy until a moment in June this summer. LeClair turned 50 years old last October, which qualified him for the PBA 50. And at the Fountain Valley Open in California this summer, LeClair topped some of the very best veteran bowlers on the planet to win his first national title. And Brian LeClair joins us in studio. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for asking me here.
Well, first I want to talk about the championship that you won in June, the Fountain Valley Open. You'd been on the PBA Tour for a really long time. You finished second a couple of times, but you never got your hands around that trophy. What did that mean to you?
It was a lifelong dream. I worked, my entire life in the sport of bowling, and came close a couple times in the actual the big PBA Tour. And for the most part, I had a disappointing career, and to finally get that one big national title probably meant the world to me.
You say disappointing career, but you won a lot of money on the PBA Tour, maybe not a lot in terms of other professional sports. You made TV broadcasts, you finished second a couple of times. A lot of people would say that's a pretty good career, but you say disappointing.
Yeah, I think I had a lot of talent, and a lot of people told me I had a lot of talent, and I don't think I ever captured that talent the way that I should have. And I had some of the all-time records, most tournaments ever bowled in without winning a national title. The all-time money winner without winning a national title. There's some prestige to that, I guess, but it's not a title you really want.
Well, you picked up a title at the Fountain Valley Open in California in June, and here you are on the right side of the screen, and this is part of a 300 game that you rolled.
Yeah, actually, this game kind of got me going in the tournament because I was kind of struggling the whole tournament. I barely made the first cut, which would have been only second tournament that I did not make the cut. And I bowled the first game, and that's what they call the cashers round. And I did not bowl very good the first game. And I took a chance, and I played a different line with a different release. And the first game that I tried that, I shot 300, and it just, I shot some really huge scores the rest of the tournament. And I had to bowl more games that day than anybody else because what happens is after qualifying, depends on where you qualify, you get buys where you don't have to bowl all the rounds in the finals. And unfortunately, I just barely made the cut, so I had to bowl all day. And I led every single round except to the last game. I fell to second, and then I had to win 2 matches on TV.
And to accomplish that, after taking that break from the PBA Tour, let me first ask you, did you think you'd go back? Because it was 5 or 6 years ago when you stepped away from the major tour. Did you envision, once you turned 50, jumping into the PBA 50?
I believe that I always had that in the back of my mind. Who knows how you're going to feel, what your health is going to be when you get to that level. Because I grew up bowling on tour with probably 5 to 10 of the greatest ever. And the names of Pete Weber and Parker Bone, Norm Duke, Brian Voss. They're Hall of Famers. They're in the top 5 or 10 with national titles of all time, and I still had to beat them that tournament.
Right. So
they just happened to turn 50 around the same time I did, so I had to beat them all over again. Some people, depending on when they turn 50, it's a lot easier, but I had to beat some of the best, and that part of it made me feel special.
Like any sport that people don't know a lot about, it can be oversimplified to the point where it's kind of hard to understand what makes an athlete great at it. So, for example, a race car driver isn't just going around in circles with their foot on the gas. When it comes to bowling, for those that don't truly understand the sport or haven't played at a high level, how do you explain what makes a great bowler great?
The biggest part, as any sport, is obviously repetition, coming up with a style that's either unique, or something you can duplicate. And it's one thing I've always tried to do is being able to duplicate my swing and the way the ball rolls off my hand. There's a lot of things that bowlers do with a bowling ball that most people would have no idea what we do.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between throwing a good shot and getting 9 and throwing a good shot and getting a strike.
Right.
And there's times when you can't figure that out, why you get 9 every single time. And the great ones accomplish that. But there's a uniqueness to it. There's something that there's a lot of things people don't understand. You know, what I do at my job every day, drilling bowling balls to help other bowlers, putting the right type of scientific drilling into the bowling ball to make that bowling ball do something different for that unique bowler.
And I like that term scientific because it very much is a science when you break down the sport to its core, and you're involved in it all the time, not just when you're bowling, but with your day job as well. And with more on that, let's go over to Brittany Devane.
Hey, Kelly. Earlier today, I stopped by Revolution's Pro Shop, which is sort of like Santa's workshop for bowlers and with bowling balls instead of toys. I asked Brian to walk me through the process step by step of customizing an average model off the shelf and getting it ready for an individual's needs. And as it turns out, it's a lot more technical than it looks.
I'm basically copying the exact span from this bowling ball to this bowling ball. And the business that I do at the highest level is very, very important because there's different types of lane conditions that the better bowlers like Lou bowl on, which need different types of bowling balls for different lane conditions. So he's getting 2 different bowling balls today, that one for one lane condition, one for another one. This bowling ball is actually going to go down the lane and hook a little bit harder on the back end, and this one's going to actually hook a little bit earlier and smoother. You want to try to make this one feel just like this one. You're dealing with 64ths of an inch, and when you actually cut the thumb hole, you're actually dealing with 1/1000th as the width of a thumb hole. So it's pretty technical. When you try to cut the holes to be exact, you know, even the width of a pencil line is actually too wide. That it's actually you know, if you can actually scratch the lines on the bowling ball, you can be a lot more accurate.
Now, this drill press that Brian is using right here, it costs around $13,000, and it's known in the industry as the Cadillac of drill presses. It's another important step in the process to get each measurement exactly right. Kelly?
All right, thank you, Brittany. And now let's take it back to the alley, the scientific approach to it. And earlier you talked about the repetition of the swing, but depending on the oil patterns, and there are different variables where you have to think your way through the shot. Yes.
It's a certain type of spin off your hand, rolling, they call it axis rotation. There's different types of axis rotation you apply with your hand, and the better bowlers do it, and the amateurs, it's almost like in golf, you know, the good golfers can hit it right to left and left to right. Yep. Well, we put different types of spin on the bowling ball for that to happen. And, you know, as it relates to the pro shop, you know, there's a lot of physics inside a bowling ball. There's a weight block. There's different shapes of weight blocks inside bowling balls. I'm lucky enough to work for the #1 bowling manufacturer in the country, in the world, Storm, which Rotagrip is a sister company to it. So I get to learn from the best and learn how to place that weight block in a bowling ball to somebody's unique spin, roll off their hand. Obviously, people that spend their life in and around bowling love the sport, but it's still trying to find traction with, you know, mainstream sports, and maybe it isn't where it was at one time. But where do you see the future of bowling? Can it be the type of sport? And ESPN just recently signed another contract with the PBA, but can it be a sport that's going to rise in popularity from where it is? Bowling's always been very popular. There's probably more people that roll a ball down the lane than compete in any other sport. I mean, there's always going to be some things that bowling's, you know, up against. Obviously, you can't fit 50,000 people in a bowling center to watch. You know, and a lot of revenue comes from not just TV audience, but attendance. We're always going to struggle with that. Another thing we're always going to struggle with is oil's invisible. So you can't see how good these guys are and see what they can do.
Interesting. Now, I know for you, bowling is a family sport for you and your family. And earlier this year, here at CBS 6 Sports, we had a chance to talk with you and your son, Taylor, who is now a freshman at St. Rose. And tell me what, we'll get a look at the two of you bowling here, but what does bowling mean to the family?
Well, it's always been a big part of my life. I grew up, every Sunday after church, going to the local bowling center in Chatham Bowl and watching my father bowl pot games. And I was hoping that by the time I was 18 that, they would let me compete. And when I got to 18, they told me I was too good. They wouldn't let me. So, and they picked it up, at a very young age. But it's always been a big part, and I enjoy bowling with both of them.
And then finally, what's next for you? What's the next big tournament on the horizon?
Well, since I was in the top 8 in the National PBA 50 Tour in points, I get to go enter the World Series of Bowling for free. And so I'll be heading to Reno the second week in December. And there's some PBA 50 tournaments, but most of the tournaments are against the young kids. So I'll have to be on top of my game.
All right, well, best of luck, and we'll continue to follow your career. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And coming up next, for those of you that like to gamble on daily fantasy sites, well, bad news, New York is shutting it down. Those details next on The Edge.